Mark woke up to the same alarm as yesterday, and the day before, and a week ago. He didn't immediately realize he was stuck. At first, he thought he hadn't gotten enough sleep and had the days mixed up. But when a colleague said the same thing about the rain, and his boss yelled at him for the same report, Mark realized time had stopped. He'd relived this day 7 times already. Every morning, he'd open his eyes and look at his phone, yesterday's date. He tried to change the course of events, skipping coffee, skipping work, screaming, and breaking dishes. The day repeated itself over and over, like someone rewinding and pausing a movie. On the 8th day, he gave in. He sat in the kitchen, sipping iced tea and looking out the window. Outside, it was raining, as always. Suddenly, he noticed a box in the hallway he'd never seen before. An old cardboard box, tied with twine. He opened it. Inside was a watch. A massive one, with a bronze case and a cracked dial. The hands were frozen at 12. Next to it lay a note, written in faded ink, "Win me, and time will begin to flow. But the price will be high." Mark chuckled. What could be worse than an endless day? He took the key lying nearby and inserted it into the hole in the back cover. He turned it. The clock began ticking. Loudly, heavily, like the heart of a dying man. In that same second, the world around him changed. The rain stopped, the sun peeked up from behind the clouds. The phone showed a new date. Mark exhaled. Freedom. He went to bed, knowing that tomorrow would be a new day. In the morning, he woke up with a pain in his back. He stood up, walked to the mirror, and froze. An old man stared back at him. A gray beard, wrinkles, age spots. He raised his hands to his face, his fingers trembled, his skin sagging. The clock on the nightstand showed not 7 in the morning, but 7 in the evening. And the date, 10 years later. Mark screamed, but his voice was hoarse, alien. Mark couldn't believe his eyes. He ran a hand over his face, wrinkles, a gray stubble. His hair had thinned, and bags had appeared under his eyes. He walked closer to the mirror. A stranger looked back at him, but they were his own eyes. Frightened, young, alive. "What's wrong with me?" he whispered. The clock on the nightstand continued ticking. Loudly, inexorably. Mark grabbed it, tried to stop it. The winding key fell out and rolled under the bed. Mark fell to his knees and crawled under the bed. His fingers touched the cold metal. He crawled back out, inserted the key, and turned it the other way. The clock creaked, the hands twitched, and froze. Silence. Mark exhaled. He looked in the mirror. The old man remained the same. The wrinkles hadn't smoothed out, the hair hadn't grown back. He was a prisoner of his old body. He tried to leave the apartment. The key turned in the lock, and the door opened. The hallway was empty. He walked down the stairs and out onto the street. The world had changed. The building he lived in looked old and peeling. A vacant lot now stood where the grocery store had been. A boarded-up building stood where the familiar cafe had once stood. Mark wandered the street, recognizing nothing. He went into a drugstore to look at the calendar. The date on the wall was marked 10 years in advance. "How much?" he asked the pharmacist. $5, the young man replied, not understanding the question. Mark took out his wallet. Inside were old bills that were no longer accepted. He went outside and sat on a bench. The sun was setting, and the city was plunging into twilight. He raised his hand and looked at the watch on his wrist. It showed the same day, the same time as the clock in his apartment. But the hands weren't moving. He realized he hadn't just aged. He'd jumped 10 years into the future. And now he was stuck in this time, in this body. Without money, without a home, without a future. He returned to the apartment. The door was open. Everything inside was the same, only there was more dust. The clock stood frozen on the nightstand. Mark sat down on the bed and clasped his head in his hands. Suddenly, he noticed a box in the corner of the room. The same one the clock had been in. He opened it. Inside was a diary. The handwriting was feminine, neat. The first entry, today I wound the clock. Lost 1 year. But I broke the loop. The second, I wound it again. Lost 2 years. Now I'm 35, but I should be 28. The last entry broke off mid-sentence. I've aged 20 years. I can't stand it anymore. If you're reading this, don't wind the clock. Better eternity in a vicious circle than life in someone else's body. Mark closed the diary. He realized the watch belonged to his grandmother. She, too, was stuck in time. And she had chosen aging to escape. But the price was too high. He looked at the watch. The hands were frozen. He could win it again. Return to the vicious circle. Or remain in this time, in this body. There was no choice. He took the key. Mark sat on the bed, clutching the winding key. The clock ticked quietly, the hands motionless. He looked at it and thought, a noose or old age? Eternity in a single day, or 10 years stolen with a single turn? He remembered his grandmother. She had chosen escape. She had aged, lost years, but at least she had seen new days. New sunsets, new people, new life. And he? He had seen the same warnings, the same rain, the same conversations. This wasn't life. It was a prison. He inserted the key into the hole in the back. The clock creaked, the hands twitched. Mark turned the key once. There was a click, and the hands moved forward. Not quickly, but slowly, as if time were reluctantly returning. Mark felt his body grow heavier. He looked at his hands. The wrinkles had deepened, the skin had thinned. He had aged a few more years. The clock showed a new date. He went outside. The world had changed again. The building across the street had fallen into even greater disrepair, and an office building had sprung up in its place. He went into the cafe where he used to drink coffee. He ordered a cup. The coffee was bitter, like his whole life. He paid with the change he found in the pocket of his old coat. As he left, he saw his reflection in the window. A gray beard, deep wrinkles, a hunched back. He was almost 80. He returned to the apartment. The clock lay on the nightstand. He could win it again. Lose another year, another 10, another life. But he was tired. He sat down on a chair and closed his eyes. Suddenly, he heard a soft laugh. He opened his eyes. A girl of about 7 stood in the corner of the room. She was wearing a white dress, bare feet, and blonde hair. She looked at him and smiled. "Who are you?" Mark asked. "I'm the one who lived in this clock," the girl replied. "Your grandmother brought me here. She thought the clock stole time. But it doesn't steal. It collects. Every day you lived remains here. I am the memory of all the days you never lived." "What should I do?" Mark whispered. "Choose. Stay in this body and live on. Or return to the cycle. But if you return, you'll forget everything. And you'll repeat the same day forever." Mark looked at his hands. Old, wrinkled, but alive. He remembered his grandmother's diary. She didn't want eternity in the cycle. She chose life. Even a short life. Even in someone else's body. "I'm staying," Mark said. The girl smiled and disappeared. The clock on the nightstand stopped forever. Mark lived for another 3 years. He went to the park, fed pigeons, talked to strangers. He told no one his story. Who would have believed it? He died in a chair, looking out the window at the sunset. A smile frozen on his face. When they found him, he was holding an old photograph. It showed a girl in a white dress. On the back, someone had written, "Thanks for the time." It was worth it. The clock remained on the nightstand. No one wounded anymore. It gathered dust in the empty apartment until one day it was thrown in the trash. Someone else found it. He thought it was an antique, expensive watch. He wound it, and time began to move again. But that's another story.